Hello everybody, Sani here, engineer, MBA, and investor. And in today's video, I want to talk about Bitcoin, the Lightning Network, the second layer. I want to talk about a little bit of history, why it's so important, and how it works, and perhaps sort of apply all of that what we learned today into what we should be expecting in the future with the amazing Lightning Network. Now, before we talk about this, guys, do like this video, smash that like button, destroy it. Hit that like button, guys. It's quick, it's free, it's easy, really helps this channel. The YouTube algorithms, you guys know how it works. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing, joining our community. We talk about Bitcoin, we talk about genomics, we talk about energy slash Tesla. So lots of technology talks in this channel. So do subscribe, hit that notification bell if you want our videos to get to you faster. So I made a couple of videos in the recent weeks about Bitcoin, the Lightning Network. I also commented on the black paper from Nassim Taleb, who's well known in the space, who sort of attacked Bitcoin. And he compared Bitcoin with Visa card systems, MasterCards, credit cards, and even bank wire transfers. But what he failed to realize was that Bitcoin is a one layer system, and all these credit card system, wire transfers systems, whatever you want to call them, Western Unions, whatever you want to call them, those are multiple layers on the fiat currency system, right? These are multiple complex layers, right? And that's why you can have so many transactions per second with those credit cards, with those bank wire transfers, for example. I would argue the bank wires are so slow. Even e-transfers for Canadians are slow at times. So but if you're going to talk about Bitcoin, if you're going to talk about this new era, and if the bearer's strongest argument is that, then this is where, such as Talib, right? But this is where the Lightning Network comes into play, right? This is a second layer system. It has been in the works for years and years. This is not something new. What is new that the adoption is increasing, but this has been here for a while. I do want to mention that Nasib Taleb completely failed to mention the Lightning Network once in his black paper. So to me, that shows his lack of understanding of what is going on with Bitcoin and the network. But it is what it is. People are going to write what they want to write. So you as an investor, you as an educated person, you have to do your own research, try to understand what's going on with this network. Why are people mentioning the Lightning Network? Why do you see this electrical bolt emoji on social media platforms such as Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, and so on? And then you sort of have to dive deep, right? And a little bit of history here. I have this infographic here, the Lightning Network, a brief history. I don't know how much time we want to spend into this, but basically in 2009, right? Even Satoshi Nakamoto, when he was obviously around in 2009, and when Bitcoin came about in the early part of 2009, he in Bitcoin 0.1 he actually included a raw draft of code that would let users to update a transaction before it was confirmed. And this is actually really one of the first moves that were made to sort of allow all of this to happen, right? And I do want to mention that Satoshi actually made a few comments on how Bitcoin would eventually have another layer on top of it, and that's where smart contracts come into play. That's where Lightning Network basically comes into play, right? So Satoshi sort of had that vision as well, even before Bitcoin really grew, right? He knew that a one layer system wouldn't necessarily suffice just by the sheer basis of mathematics, right? The number of transactions, the cost, the fees, and so on. He absolutely understood that if you want to buy coffee, then perhaps the one layer system of Bitcoin wouldn't suffice, right, for the masses, for the billions of people around the world. And he sort of knew that another layer would have to come about. And obviously, over the years, as you can see, I think it was more in 2013. This is when the Lightning networks really started talking about it. This is when people started labeling the word, Lightning network, because the space has been growing. Don't forget, Bitcoin came about in 2009. It took a few years before people started talking about it on Reddit, on different subreddits, on forums, and so on, right? So this started talking really 2013. I would say that in 2017, Although here 2015 they say that this is when officially all of this really uh, big work came about. They would say that it's 2015. I would argue that the Lightning Network popularity really came about 2017. If you think it came about before then, let me know in comments below. I know a lot of you are veterans in the space. Let me know what you guys think. But I actually think it was more in 2017. But it looks like in 2015, right, there was two individuals, obviously Thaddeus and Joseph Poon, and they sort of worked on this project, and that's where the Lightning project really came about, right? This is like the year that Lightning Network took off, right? But just note that this was here even before then, right? There were discussions, obviously cryptocurrencies, and besides there's Bitcoin, then there's all the other cryptocurrencies. They had individuals in those spaces that were actually working on some similar technologies as well. So the space was growing anyway, so this was bound to happen, right? So I want to talk a little bit about how the Lightning Network works, and then we can sort of move on to what unlocks we can have, right? What applications, how it really solves our problems, and why legacy media just doesn't cover it. So, Bitcoin itself, right? The first layer system, does have a scalability problem, right? And when we mean scalability problem, we're not saying that it just won't work in the system. We're just saying that transaction speeds won't be comparable to the multiple layers of system from the fiat current system we have, such as Visa in this case, right? 65,000 transactions per second on a credit card system like Visa. And then on the first layer, Bitcoin, you have this 7 transactions per second. I do want to mention though that these are rough numbers, right? And again, you have to take this and understand that all of this works with fees, all of this works with the number of participants on the network. So your transaction can actually go through a lot faster. I do want to mention that I heard a great story of someone who actually transacted zero point 0.5 Bitcoin, right? So half of a Bitcoin. It took about 30 minutes on the first layer system, 30 minutes for, I think they did it for like a 10 or 15 sats, right? This is pennies, right? This is not even a penny, right? It's negligible, right? And my point here is that 30 minutes is actually way better than even some multiple layers of fiat currency system. If you've ever wired bank transfers or played with different Western Unions or alike, sometimes it can get well above 30 minutes. Even in Canada, you have this e-transfer system only available to Canadian banks for Canadian citizens. And even though that system, e-transfer, although sometimes it can take 20, 30 minutes, sometimes I saw it take at least 4 to 6 hours, even more in the early days, right? So I do want to put things in perspective, right? It's not just a credit card system here, right? Obviously, this looks bad when you see these numbers, but just as a first layer system, Bitcoin has a transaction speed and has a cost basis is way better than most and if not all existing systems in a fiat currency system. And you have to remember that Bitcoin here has no medium party, right? Visa on its own is a medium party, right? They are in between you and the merchant by the nature of their business, right? And they can literally cut off your transaction if they want, which they have, right, in the past. Bitcoin cannot do that because Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer system. That's why it's like comparing oranges with apple at this point. This is why I think this number here is misleading, but it is what it is. Let's just talk about how it works and then move on to the application, like I said. So let's say you have Alice and Bob, right? They often want to transact each other. I think there's a lot that example that comes a lot about the bar tab, right? The bar tab. So if you're at the bar, you're trying to buy a beer, and you have, Bob want to buy a beer from Alice, the bartender. It just wouldn't make sense that every single time you have to take a beer, you basically buy a Bitcoin to Alice, right? You basically send it to the blockchain on the ledger on the Bitcoin network, and then you would incur those costs, that fees, and then obviously there would be a transaction speed as we discussed. What happens if you have this smart contract system, right? You sort of open up a pay channel, right? Payment channel between Alice and Bob, and that you can close it anytime. But after you're done with taking, maybe you wanted not one beer, but maybe you wanted three beers. After you're done with those three beers, you close that payment channel, right? Then you only have, in theory, one big transaction, right, to make on the first layer system on the blockchain technology of Bitcoin, right? And already that, right? Let's say you want to buy three beers. Three transactions on the first layer system would obviously be more expensive than one single transaction, just by the sheer nature of mathematics here, right? If you just take it as a common sense, really base level, right? So that's what they're talking about here. Instead of transaction on chain means the first layer of Bitcoin, you create a payment channel, right? And then this is basically a multi-signature address, which means spanning from the ledger entry can only be made if both keys sign. So Bob and Alice will have to sign. So again, it's not physically signing. Nothing's being done here. All of that is done through your, for example, if you're with Strike, which obviously runs the app, the company that runs on the Lightning Network, that they do all of that for you, right? But the idea there is that you basically interact on the Lightning Network, which is a second layer system, and then this payment channel occurs on the main blockchain technology. So the first layer is aware of that payment channel, right? You're not doing this off rail, right? This is not something you're doing between, Strike, for example. Strike is still interacting with the first layer system, right? So you just have to be aware of that. This is what we call a smart contract, right? So as long as you keep that payment channel, you can always interact on it, and you update the balance sheet, and when you're done with it, you just close it, right? But here's the power, right? And as we see these graphics, right, I think you guys can see already where this is heading. And by the way, Bob and Alice both have a signed copy of that balance sheet, so that means that if anyone tries to like run away with it, you can actually revert it back to the initial state or to the previous state, which means that you will not be left hanging, right? Basically, that's the whole point of a smart contract. Now, what happens when Bob now wants to pay to Carol, right? But Carol here, right, is a third person, right? And because Bob already had a payment channel with Alice, and Alice assumed that has a big payment channel to Carol, Bob can actually interact with Carol through those two hops, right? And the beauty of here is that basically, because of the smart contract nature, Alice here will have to give that Bitcoin sent from Bob to Carol because of the nature of some smart contract, and all of that. Until that is not done, Bob will never be able to basically sign off from the fact that his Bitcoin that was sent to Carol eventually gets to Karen. So once that's done, all of that is signed. All of that is, and this is what we call the Lightning Network, right? This is the network, right? It's not just between Bob and Alice. It's when the Carols, when the Karen, when the John, when the Evans, all of them come into play and make this network, right? That you no longer have to interact with directly to that person, because interacting directly with that person is expensive. That's what's happening in the first layer system, right? That's exactly what it is, peer to peer. But the Lightning Network, the beauty of it is that it allows you to sort of interact with the same people that you want to interact with without interacting directly, and using those payment channels that have been opened up. Now, the beauty of this is that this is scalable, right? This is scalable. The idea of that is that as you scale the network, this is when the beauty kicks in, because there'll be many, many more merchants on it, many, many more participants on it, and this is where you have more payment channels on it. But you can still interact with the first layer system, right? Nothing prevents you to interact with the first layer system. But what you need to be mindful of is that when you want to buy your coffee, when you want to buy, just like in El Salvador, you want to go to McDonald's, you want to go to Starbucks now, you will have to interact with the Lightning Network that they've already implemented on their end. All you have to do is pull up your cell phone, go through your wallet, which would be a Lightning Network wallet, such as a wallet of Satoshi, for example, and then pull it up, and then get that QR code, and then send your Bitcoin to the merchant through the Lightning Network, through those payment channels that we talked about in that network, right? Low fees, almost non-existing fees, almost non-negligible, and it is the beauty of it. It is instantaneous, almost instantaneous. We are talking about less than a second, guys. We are talking about so fast that it puts every fiat currency system into shame, including credit card systems, and it scales up with almost no fees. And to me now, although you're still comparing apple to oranges, you are putting every single fiat currency system, whether that's the first layer, the third layer, the fifth layer, the 10th layer, out of business. You are absolutely eroding Western unions of the world. You're putting remittance in back into the pockets of the people that really deserve it. You're taking off those merchants in between the merchant and the citizen, or between citizen and citizens. You're taking off that middleman person, like the middle Western unions of the world, the banking institutions, the financial institutions, legacy institutions. This is the beauty. That's the application. That's what you need to be mindful of. If you want to know more about this Lightning Network, there's a beautiful book written by several individuals. It is on GitHub. It is free. I just want to mention it. I'm not sure if there's a copy of the book on Amazon. If there is, I'll leave it in the comments below. If you really want to have the copy physically, I know some of you love reading physical book. But this book was written by several authors, including René Picard, which actually is a scientist. I've heard him in a podcast with Andreas Antonopoulos. I just butchered his fat last name, but this person here, Andreas, is well known in the Bitcoin community. He was one of the pioneers, and Rene here is a scientist, PhD, really smart person. And they sort of went back and forth on the Peter McCormack podcast that I listened to a few weeks ago on the Lightning Network. So, beautiful podcast episode. They wrote a book together with another author here. It is available on GitHub for free. So, if you're curious, go over it, look into the specifics for people that are more computer science geeks, or people that are software engineers that really want to know more about it, or just people that want to make sure that this is, a real thing and it's not a scam, right? This is something you have to do. I always keep repeating to you guys, you have to do your own research. So very important. And we're running down here on time, but I did want to end this video with this. Taleb completely ignored the Lightning Network because he knows deep down that that exactly puts every single system in fiat into shame, and that puts all the bears argument about transaction speeds and about cost into shame. Even then, right? Even then, the first layer system is amazing. We've seen many people transact billions of dollars on the first layer system with almost like $10, right? Do that in the fiat currency and get back to me and let me know what is the fees. I can guarantee you it'll be a lot more than $10. Completely a lot more. Like, we are talking about a dozen multitudes up, magnitudes up than $10 if you want to transact 10 billions of dollars in the fiat currency system. Plus, there's the fact that you need to be aware that fiat currency system has so many layers that can block you from your transaction. Bitcoin does not block you. We are all participants of the network. There is no administrator. We are all users. We interact with users directly. We don't need middleman parties. We don't need to have institutions or government or authorities to tell you who to transact with. All of that is on the network. This is the new era. This is what the Lightning Network allows you now, not just transact to a big amount of Bitcoin, but if you want to buy your everyday coffee, if you want to buy your bread, if you want to buy your wine or your beer or whatnot, then you can do it on the Lightning Network. There are many companies out there that are adopting it. Twitter is testing on a Lightning Network to allow their users to interact on the network. On the network, there's Strike, obviously, in El Salvador and other regions as well, developing. And then you have all these big exchanges sort of working on adopting the Lightning Network. So we'll see what happens. Again, we are still early in the game, although I would argue, like we saw in the history, this has been going for a while. I'm quite excited, quite bullish about this space, not just about Bitcoin, but the Lightning Network. I think the Lightning Network is changing the game. I think it's beautiful. I think the code behind it is beautiful. The way it was stress test, I remember when it was still in beta testing, there were so many people around it. The community is behind it. We'll see what happens. It puts, like I said, all systems in fiat into shame, and it basically solidifies the thesis that Bitcoin is the future. Bitcoin is the new currency, is the new money of the world, and we are moving further into a decentralized world. We'll see what happens. I'll leave you guys with this. Hopefully you guys appreciate this video. I really want to make this video dedicated to Lightning Network, the history, why, how it works, and the application, the future, what we should be expecting. So subscribe if you haven't. Enjoy this beautiful weekend, guys. It is Saturday, so leave me a comments below what you think about the Lightning Network, Bitcoin, and so on. Really curious to see what you guys think. Thank you for watching, and we will see each other tomorrow, Sunday. Thanks for watching.